This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience. David Housel said it best, the whole of the Auburn experience. Yes, it involves sports, Auburn football, and the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride that it continues to be, and probably always will be, let's be honest. It involves Auburn Volleyball right now, who is 14-0, probably one of the highest points, and I'm not that well versed on it, in their career. But it goes outside of sports. It goes beyond borders. It goes beyond states and counties. It's about all of us together through academics, through sports, through just life experiences. The Auburn experience is a beautiful thing when you look at the whole nature of it. And that is what we aim to accomplish here on this podcast, the Auburn experience. And as always, that experience is best had with multiple people. Well, not multiple. I've just got one here tonight. My good friend, Austin Scott, my co-host for this show. Welcome back, Austin.
Thanks. Where you go, everybody? Glad to be here again. Really, Kyle says it best every week in our little intro. The Auburn experience, it encompasses so much, and we're glad to be doing it together. And glad to have everybody listening, so we can all reminisce and talk about the ups and downs, like you said.
Well, I'll be honest, that was probably not my best intro, but hey, listen, not everything about Auburn's firing on all cylinders right now, so I think they can give me a little bit of grace.
That's right. That's right.
So our usual agenda is we've got at least 2 to 3 main topics that we want to hit, but in our opening segment, we just kind of have started calling it the "What's Hot" section. You know, like what's got everybody jazzed to talk about. And unfortunately, during the times like this, that's some negative stuff, but just maybe frustrating things, and obviously around Auburn football, what's going on with it right now. For those of you that may be listening in posterity, if that's the right word, in the future, Auburn's going through a bit of an up and down season. Maybe coaching changes on the horizon as well. 3-2. A lot of people had high hopes that we were going to be 5-0, exiting a 5-game home stretch, which we'll talk more about in just a second in our second topic. But we're 3-2. I think a lot of people were realistic and said 4-1. I said 5-0, but 4-1. We sit 3-2. And the buzzword that is being really thrown around a lot lately, Austin, is second half adjustments. You cannot escape it. The facts are there. The stats are there. The obsession is there in some sense of the word. Second half adjustments, when I say that, what's your take of it for Auburn football, and how do you process all of that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. A lot of people, it's going around. It's being talked about because Auburn has just struggled in the second half to be able to put points on the board, look resembling of the team that they are in the first half. Last week with Missouri, jump out to a 14-0 lead, don't score again until overtime. This weekend, jump out to 17-0 lead, and Auburn never recovers and is able to get down the field again. So it's frustrating, and fans are frustrated, and I get it, rightfully so, because that's what these coaches, they're employed to do. Is it's not just game plan throughout the week; it's make those adjustments on the fly and figure out how you might need to tweak things in order to stay in the game and keep firing on all cylinders. Auburn in the first half, an offense that we haven't seen really all year, looked composed and put together. Robbie Ashford had an incredible start and really played well the rest of the night before fumbles kind of got to him, but just couldn't keep it going to get in the end zone, though they had their chances in the second half. So it's frustrating. We all see the stats on how few points are being scored, how no touchdowns are being scored. It's not a recipe for success, and I get the frustration a lot, but I would caution people to say, "Oh, well, the coaches don't understand," because they have all the analytics, they have all the stats, and they see all that you're seeing and then some. And I guarantee they're frustrated as well. Their jobs are on the line. Like, it doesn't matter if they're winning or not. Their jobs are always on the line because that's the state of the sport today. So they understand it. Let's hope they can get it turned around for Auburn's sake and their own. But I get the frustration from all involved.
I get it. I understand it. I was equally frustrated, and I've been equally frustrated as everybody else. I've been in, except for the second game, every single game. so far. So I've witnessed an impertinence. Bruce Pearl, in a good way, talks about needing witnesses to come and see, the team obviously play at home, but on the road especially. Right. We've all been witnesses, either on the radio, on the TV, or in person to the second half. But as you said, the coaches, the players, they have all the stats. They have the actual experience of what's happening on the field. It's very easy for us to sit back and point these things out, for beat writers to sit there and point these things out. And that's the beat writer's job. I get it. I wish some of them, had not such a slant in certain directions, but that's not my decision to make. That's everybody's going to make their own choices. But let's hit the facts and talk about the second half, because it is not a good thing when you actually look at what it looks like. You can find this. Everybody's sharing it, repasting it. I don't know who to credit with the original. I am sure it is one of our beat writers or media personalities with the Auburn space. But going back to the Ole Miss game, these are the points that were scored in the second half in 2021. Ole Miss 3, Texas A&M 0, Mississippi State 6. I can't believe we scored 6 against Mississippi State. I forgot about how many points we even scored that, because we allowed so many points. Let's not even talk about it. I was just like, I can watch like his face turning red right now.
I can't relive that one.
South Carolina 3, Alabama 0, Penn State 6, Missouri 0, LSU 0. And when I look at this, breakdown of the second half scoring, the most not mind-numbing and frustrating part is in the last 3 of 4, 0.
Yeah.
It's not from a lack of trying. And people love to throw out, well, no adjustments were made. Adjustments were made, but adjustments are made on both sides. The question is who made the better adjustments based off of the information at hand. It looks like the other team each time has done that. You'd expect that from teams like LSU, Penn State, Alabama, but you may expect teams like Missouri, South Carolina, probably the state that they're in currently when Auburn played them, to not be making as good of second half adjustments. So all in all, like, I just don't know how to completely rationalize this, because like you said, we see it for ourselves here written out. We're frustrated too. We also recognize that we don't have all the information. How do we process this as Auburn fans going forward?
Yeah, and I think it's important, because I don't want anyone jumping on us. These are Power 5 opponents.
Yes.
And I mean, that's more on, now granted, Mercer and San Jose State have great programs, blah, 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 blah. That's more on the level of what you would expect to be scoring at.
I don't think you're going to have to worry about Mercer and San Jose State fans coming to get you.
We'd welcome them. We'd welcome them. I'll share my Twitter handle at the end of the episode. But yeah, and I think you made a good point about it's not for lack of adjustments. They're not going at halftime being like, "All right, we're doing great things." I bet they're over there, saying, "Oh, we're beat tonight," and not changing a thing. And they're not doing that in the game either. But it is the effective adjustments that aren't happening. And Kyle, you hit on that the other team has good coaches too that are well employed and well thought of, and their adjustments are working better. Now, that's not an excuse for Auburn's coaches, because their job is to figure out how to make better adjustments than their adjustment. And that's all throughout the second half. And it's not happening. And that's where the frustration comes in. And I think that a lot of people like to balance the line of coaching versus player execution. And I think there's guilt on both sides.
Right.
You can argue, is there more on certain side than the other? And I think that would be another time and place for that. But there is guilt on both sides. And if you don't think that's the case, Anders Carlson, we love him. He's struggling kicking the ball through the uprights. Now, granted, he had an ACL tear. How's that affected him this year? We don't know. He's struggling. And so I think that's an easy way to see that that's an adjustment. We all saw all the turnovers, we all saw all the turnovers. Some were lost. Some fumbles weren't lost. That all slows things down anyway. So that's player execution that's not happening. And it doesn't matter if you make the best adjustments in the world. If your players can't execute it and perform to what those adjustments are capable of, we're going to keep seeing the same results. So there's guilt on both sides. Makes it equally frustrating, though.
It does. Yeah. The funny thing is a lot of people want to act like they have all the answers, but then when you ask them to give you the answers, they won't provide them, or they say, I love this excuse, I'm not paid millions of dollars. Well, then why are you offering your take on this thing? I mean, like, okay, you were just now you want to disparage what you were just saying about we need second half adjustments, but because you're not making millions of dollars, you're just admitting that you're not qualified to make that statement.
Yeah.
Listen, frustrations abound. We've said it a lot. Uh, I've asked, pleaded, begged, rationalized for people that have patience. I don't think we're going to get that based off of reading the tea leaves. When I first say that to Coach Harsin, I hope I'm wrong, because if Coach Harsin fails, Auburn fails. And I think that's what's lost about a lot of people. A lot of people are starting to celebrate this. Aha, we got you. We're saying the second half adjustments. We've got the facts to show for it. But you're missing that celebration that you're having about getting Coach Harsin. That means that Auburn fails too. Maybe temporarily, yes. But the question is, does that struggle they go through put them back even further in a race that is quickly getting ahead of them? When we talk about Alabama's and Georgia's, Texas A&M, God love them. They have every tool they could have, and they still can't get the job done. LSU will get back up there. You see what an LSU team could. They were not a good LSU team when we played them last night, but they have the athletes, and it's just a matter of, can Brian Kelly do what he's done? If he flips that switch with LSU that's there, oh boy, that's going to be a dangerous team. The question is, we'll have to wait and see. I would just love the opportunity for us to use context, wait for the second half adjustments to maybe get there a little bit longer, be patient, and maybe the switch gets flipped. Not as quickly as we would have liked it to, but I think it's a fair request. But that's just me, and I tend to be a little bit more patient than most, probably to my own detriment. I don't know.
Sure. I think there's an argument for both. I get some of the people that would like a change to happen. I get their points, and I see all the things that are the points on both sides, whether it's, well, look, the trajectory of recruiting or the trends of where others are going and what's a priority now. And I also see the patient side, that if you never give someone time to build, then you're just in a constant circle. I think there's a nice balance in there. And someone has to make those decisions. There's an interim athletic director, and that is not us, and I'm okay with that. But what I hope, and I know Kyle feels the same way, is that those people make those best decisions. Those decisions not for themselves and not for what they would prefer, so they can have more input or that they can say gotcha, but that Auburn succeeds, whether that's short term or long term. So we'll have to see. We will definitely be talking about it more as the year goes on. I have no doubt.
And that's the scary thing about this. Humans are making those decisions. Scary, scary time. Well, let's move into our second topic tonight. Not so much about football specifically, although this is kind of within that topic. We like to give you a kind of a well-rounded discussion here. Something now that we've completed this 5-game homestand that started with Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, Missouri, and now LSU. Lions and Tigers and Bears and Spartans. Oh my goodness. I mean, it was just,
that was good. There you go.
I've been practicing that a few times before we got started. I mean, I'd like to pretend that I'm that good to come up with something off the top of my head, but I'm not. Let's just be honest. People who've been watching this channel for a long time or listen to the podcast know that enough about me. But 5-game homestand. The amount of times, not just this weekend, but especially this weekend, because it happened more so, people came up to me and said, "Boy, you look tired." I'm like, wow, thanks. No, thanks. I mean, you're basically telling me I look awful. I mean, I get that. I mean, it's a miracle that Jess said yes to me when I asked her to marry me, but I mean, geez, I must have been looking pretty rough this weekend. 5 games in a row at home. For me, obviously those of you that know what I do, I'm on campus for every home game that I can be and sharing the experience. And that requires a lot of walking, a lot of adjusting to schedules and things like that. And I love what I do. But I'm speaking just for people that come to the games on a regular basis and that come to most of them, if not all of them. 5 games in a row at home, while in some aspects is nice, it can also be maybe a detriment in a lot of ways when you kind of compare to what maybe happens maybe traditionally, and like next year, what's coming is a
Mhm.
lot more staggering of maybe a home and away, but or maybe 2 games home and then away, 2 games home and then away. So that's where I'd like us to park it for a little second and talk about that aspect. And Austin, what do you think about preferences, the goods, the bads of what we just went through versus what's coming next year, or just even outside of these 2 years? What do you think about that? Like, what do you prefer?
Sure, yeah, this is the second time I can remember that, I've kinda gone through this. My junior year while at Auburn, we had 5 straight games to start as students. It was the year we started with Clemson. I can't remember. We had A&M was 3rd. I can't remember the rest of them. That would've been 2016. So, it was exhausting then, as students just because it was like, you know, not that you don't wanna go, but there's just no break, and as students, you gotta wait a long time to get in line, then to get in, then for the game, and then rightfully so, you're expected to be the bunch that is there till the end and loudest, and, so as a student, it was exhausting. Now, it's still exhausting. I think that I was really excited because I love home games and I love going to Jordan-Hare Stadium, when it all came out, but it at week after week, it's a lot,
Mhm.
and especially when, um, we've had, different weather like we've had. It was really hot for Penn State, we've had rain, it just you get in that cycle, and I can't imagine, like, for Kyle, like you or others who try and come to every game and drive into town or travel in, because that's just, like, you're planning your entire weekend for 5 straight weekends of
Yep.
either get in town Friday night or early Saturday morning, leave late Saturday night or leave Sunday, and then back doing it again the next week. And so I'm not a fan. I would prefer we just kinda I don't really even wanna alternate home away. I think like you said, 2 home, 1 away, 2 home, 1 away. I know it's not always perfect like that, and
Right.
we've already talked about other people's jobs tonight, but the people who have to make schedules, that stresses me out just to think about it, of how to appease everyone and get
Right.
all the right times and everything. So I would prefer you kind of even out throughout the entire year. Cause that's the other thing. Now we've had 5 home games. We only have like 2 or 3 left, 2 left, I think.
Right. And
Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and someone else the
yeah, and
rest of the way. So,
that's a good point because I found myself today leaving campus this morning, and I stayed in until about lunchtime to do a little bit of work. And yeah, I was tired and I was ready to have a break, quote unquote.
mhm,
But gosh, I realized like the season's half over, and I spent it
yeah,
half of it here already. Well, I mean, technically after this week it'll be half
sure.
over, but yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of good things that come out of it. Now, can you imagine if we did 5 in a row with the heat that was there? I think the 2019 year where we didn't get like a day below 80 until like the middle of October. This would have been absolutely miserable. Whether there was rain and overcastness, the humidity alone would have just been awful. I mean, yeah, we had to deal with some rain in the first 2 games,
Mhm,
and that just goes outside of the actual football game, but how that affects tailgating, merchants, all
yep.
that stuff. We call it a chamber commerce day. They need that as well, and they need the football team to do. Clint, I got to give him credit. We were talking this weekend, talked about people forget how much the city and the
Oh,
surrounding areas are affected by the football team too. Like,
amen.
you want to talk about pressure?
Yeah.
You didn't just fail your team. You didn't just fail a fan base. You failed an economy. Bam.
Well, and
How about
outside
the
of that,
Memphis?
outside of even the merit, if you don't believe that, go look at COVID year for tons of small towns like Auburn that rely on the college atmosphere and those 8 Saturdays a year to make it throughout the year. So, yeah, no doubt. I mean, if that's to have 5 straight for them, I'm sure is fantastic, and all that money gets spent in
Yeah.
town every weekend. But gosh, I can't imagine like you said, the heat for 5 straight. Thankfully, we ended it on such a perfect day yesterday.
And that's what I had hoped for when I saw this schedule come out. I was like, all right, maybe that October 1st
Mhm.
LSU game will be just the very beginning Christmas of the fall.
Yep.
And it was still pretty warm during the day.
Mhm.
But when that sun went down and we were all in that stadium together, whoo,
Yep.
man, you couldn't have gotten much better. Maybe I could have dealt with a little bit more chill in the air so I could actually
Mhm.
have to wear jeans, but I enjoyed the heck out of it. But I see the benefits of being here for 5 straight home games and just going, ham about all of that stuff. I'm
Sure.
sure that the merchants downtown are just like, bring it in. But now it's kind of like, we gotta get to see you until the end of October. So in your mind, so it sounds like we both prefer a schedule that favors more of a staggered approach. Are you a 1-and-1, like a home away, or do you prefer like the 2 home games, 1 situation?
I don't think I like every other. I think that's just a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. I can see the benefit of both because another thing we haven't brought up is Auburn's going on the road for the first time
That's
now
yeah,
this
perfect.
week, 6 or 5 games in, and that the road in the SEC is huge. Of having to figure that out, especially. And I know it's not like a super young team, but you're going to have Robbie Ashford starting and a kid who's never played on the road, maybe ever
Right.
in his career as a starter. And so to get that kind of under your belt early has its benefits. But I think if I could just choose forever, I think I'd do like 2-1, 2 home, 1 away, 2 home, 1 away. If you got to do 2-2 at some point during the season, I think that's probably like ideal for me.
Well, I don't have
But
it pulled up right. Go ahead.
definitely in October. Like that one year, we didn't have a single home game in October.
It's
Was
basically this time around.
Yeah, you're
Basically.
right. You're right. Where is that beginning and end? Like that's the worst. I like it. I don't care how it plays out as long as we have 3 to 4 games in October because the that's the best time to watch football in person, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I'm so glad I'm not in charge of any of that.
Yeah, it's not a role that we find envy in having to figure all that out. But I just think it affects so many different things. Like, yeah, it's been great and fun doing it for 5 straight games, like we've said. But I'm sure the merchants would like a little bit more steady income. I'm sure we, as you just brought up, the great point that it took us forever to get to, of your team needs to go on the road and figure out who they
Hmm.
are. Let's just park it there for a second. This is a team that's been trying to find stability and identity, and they have struggled to do it at home. What do you think's going to happen when they go to Athens? What do you think's
Oh
going to
yeah,
happen when they go to Vaught Hemingway Stadium? When they go to Stark Vegas? What do you
yeah,
think's going to happen? Like I'm not saying doom and gloom, destruction, despair. I saw a lot of things in this football team, even in a loss, that were very encouraging. But if you don't think that's not going to play a huge factor, then you haven't been watching football. So the fact that we are game 6 and first time going on the road, and throw in the context of a completely beleaguered offensive line, perception, health, all that, and a brand new starting quarterback, it probably would have been a great year to be in the opposite schedule. Like
yeah.
if we were doing this year, that'd probably be the best thing. Maybe.
Sure. Yeah, hindsight 2020. Yeah, oof, I don't know. I'm not saying Auburn's going to lose those games, but for a team like this, like you're saying, like that's big,
Mhm.
and to not have that. But I guess that's part of too, and maybe why a lot of people had those optimistic thoughts about the first 5 games is you love Auburn's chances at home.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't care what kind of a team looks like. That's the kind of atmosphere Jordan Hare Stadium can provide. Uh, but when it doesn't go your way, and now you're at 3-2, or and now you got to go on the road. Not quite as much optimism going around, but if the SEC listens to this podcast, which I'm sure many of them do up there, the big decision makers, I'm sure this is a must listen for them every morning on when they start their day. Um,
If that's the
we would
case, then I got a
we
few things to say other than what we're talking about here.
we would like you to put us in touch with the officiating, please.
Yes.
We would prefer us Auburn fans would prefer the scheduling of alternating a little bit more. SEC,
Could you
if you can
please
handle that.
just yeah, just what we want, could you just make that happen? That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
We know you have no other priorities other than to make us happy. Final thing on this, because you brought it up, talking about the advantage of being at home. I gave a shout out to War Eagle Productions last week and got to do it again. Also on top of that, Will Herring, somehow, if
Mm,
you get this, my friend, outstanding this year video, the hype
yeah.
video of, respecting what Jordan Hare brings to the table in terms of atmosphere and stuff like that. Like, I watched it 5 times now. Well, 4 technically.
Yeah.
And it just gets me chills every single time. I love it. Well done, Will Herring, and well done, War Eagle Productions.
Yeah, it's one of the best ones they've had in a while.
And
Someone told me at one point that there's like one is the kickoff video, and one is the tunnel video, and I guess that would be the kickoff video because the team
mhm,
has
is
come out
out.
at that
Yep.
point. So,
Yep. That's getting the fans fired, that final burst of energy,
hmm
ready to go, making, first half adjustments. We won't go back to that topic.
yeah, no.
All right, let's move into our final segment of the show. We again love to give you a well-rounded experience here, and we've talked a lot about football and the things that surround that. But we're going to talk about something here that I know not a lot of you that listen spend enough time on, and I think that you should. And it's hard to do so sometimes, depending on your schedules, whether it's on TV and whether it lines up if you're coming into town or not. I a lot of times don't understand the scheduling. I know there's reasons why these things are scheduled the way they are, but to me, it seems like you would try to line up the home games with the home games and stuff like that. But we're not going to dive into that as much. If you haven't been aware, Auburn Volleyball, and that's where we lose some of the listeners. I'm kidding. I know. Listen, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but we're going to talk about it here because this is how you don't get affected by the football struggles as much, because you are able to find happiness in other things related to Auburn. 14-0 under coach Brent Crouch right
Mm.
now. Now, you may say, okay, what's the big deal? It's volleyball, but I think people don't understand where the team has been. Since I've been doing the show, volleyball has always kind of been on the back burner of a lot of people's focus. I would argue, and this is not meant to be disparaging towards the program, former coaches, former players, and current otherwise. I would argue it probably gets the least attention these days of all of the athletics programs. Do you feel like that's fair to say, Austin, or do you feel like there's
No,
some
I think
other
yeah,
areas?
I think that's definitely fair. And we joked about what people might be saying, why do we care? Well, probably because it's struggled in the last decade and a half.
Mhm.
It's not been consistently uh, successful, and it's kind of flatlined for a little while. Just and I don't mean flatlined or just died off, but just been at the same spot for a long time,
Right.
and you lose interest in things like that when there's nothing to get you high or even low for. I think about really random similarity here, but I think about Mississippi State women's basketball. No one cared at all until they started winning the SEC and they started making it and playing and beating teams like UConn.
Mhm.
Uh, Auburn volleyball, and I'll be honest, I've never been. I say that I went to one as a student, but I've never been to one outside of that. And the only reason I know they're 14-0 is because the different Auburn social media channels have done a good job of promoting that, and people are
Yep.
starting to pick up on it. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's not gotten a lot of attention in the last few years, but this is something to give attention, and rightfully so. And so,
Right.
good for them. It's a really young team, so that should make you even more inclined to want to jump on and start following this team because these girls are going to be here for a while. These are Coach Crouch's players that he's brought in.
Mhm.
This is his second year, Kyle. Is
Hey,
that correct?
here's that sneaky thing of giving coaches time. Oh, I'm
Mm,
sorry, I
mm.
bring that up again.
This is his second year, though, correct, Kyle?
So if I have my numbers correct, so he arrived and the season got canceled because of COVID.
Mm,
And then
hmm
they went to do another season. And then I think there was more of a numbers issue. And that one was technically canceled like the eve of the season, too. I believe
Yeah,
this is his third technical season, although they've never truly played one. I could be wrong on that. I just know it's been kind of a, a tumultuous start to
sure.
get there. It may be even before. The point still stands. We haven't spent a lot of time with Coach
hmm
Crouch, his staff, and the program since he's taken the control of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so it should be exciting. And I think, Auburn's had history of not caring really about sports either when they're not doing well. Softball, you can take for example, until they got some good players in and started going to Women's College World Series. That got really hot. It's kind of simmered down a little bit, but still has a lot of intrigue because it's a fun sport. Volleyball is a fun sport, and so I
It
hope
is.
that.
It's a very fun sport.
And if we want to even get a little more particular, people stop caring about basketball for a long time, and a certain coach came in and got his players and made it fun again too. So who's to say that can't happen with Coach Crouch and Auburn volleyball? It already looks like it's happening because they're undefeated, 14-0, and so yeah, I hope people will start to. Kyle and I are going to make sure that we investigate it a little more. We're going to check out the stats, and I'm putting a lot of on Kyle that he and I have not talked about right now.
Oh
But
gosh.
we're both going to talk about what we're saying and put our money where our mouth is and
Yeah,
check out this team, and I hope others will too. And maybe we'll have a little 2-minute update every week if they
we might.
keep going well. And yeah, who knows?
Especially if other sports start diving and we need something happy to talk about. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's kind of what we addressed at the top of the segment here is that having a well-rounded experience where you can take value in things outside of whatever it's football, whether it's baseball, basketball, softball, gymnastics, things that take the big attention right now.
Hmm.
Um, if you can do that, this makes having the Auburn experience so much better. And listen, let's not mince words right here. They're 14-0, right? Huge celebration right there. And let's give credit to Alan Green, former athletic director.
That's right.
I believe this was his first hire, like
Yep.
opportunity. Someone left. I believe former coach Rick Nold stepped down,
Yep.
which is, you can argue whether it was told to step down, whatever, doesn't matter at this point. And so this is someone that he brought over from USC, but I believe,
That's
and
right.
it's kind of like an interesting, you don't see Auburn and the West Coast hooking up a whole lot in mini sports. And here we are. And this thing seems to be right now rolling. Obviously, we probably jinxed them. So sorry, Coach Crouch. Sorry, volleyball, that Austin and I just ruined the season for you if that's what happens. But I
Probably.
like what I'm seeing. They have a lot of fight in them. If nothing else, this will make you very happy. In a 2-game match, they swept Alabama 3-1 in sets both time. That is just juicy in and of itself right there. Like, I will take that all day and twice on Sunday. And then they've gone through a lot of the typical names that you'll see when you play a lot of sports in non-conference. Like, you see softball take on the Georgia States, the Alabama States, the Georgia Techs. I don't think they played Georgia Tech, but UAB, Troy, they've
Hmm.
gone through that. So they're really getting into the heart of this thing. But they're starting to get attention where they're on TV a little bit more. So look on your schedule and see if Auburn Volleyball is going to be on TV. I mean, for the first time, there were people buzzing about it on social media this past week when they took on Mississippi State and were able to win that 3-2. And it went all the way down to the wire. In case we're not going to spend all our night tonight, talking about the ins and outs of volleyball, but they play 5 best of 5 sets. So 3-2 sets, Auburn won. I'm excited because I like it when we bring something back to the forefront and have something to celebrate outside of football, basketball, and baseball. Who knows? We watched softball climb, we watched gymnastics climb, we've watched equestrian climb. Maybe
Yes.
Austin, we're talking about in a few years' time, and volleyball being, the next one of those.
Yeah. Hey, why not? And I mean, it certainly looks like things are starting off hot, and it, like Kyle said, we probably ruined their season, but
Sorry,
that just bill
I
us, I
blame
guess.
Austin. I blame
Yeah,
Austin.
that's fine. Blame me. But this could be a whole lot of fun. So, um, you know, next game is at LSU, so maybe they can pick up some
We
revenge
need
for us. It's on.
revenge, please,
That's right.
please.
Good. It's down there in Baton Rouge. It's on SEC Network Wednesday night at 7 p.m. So tune in. I'm gonna have it tuned in because I want to see this team keep winning and be undefeated. And then, hey, if you're like listening to us and you're like, what are these guys talking about? They get they got to go to Auburn 5 weeks in a row. I got to go to Auburn 5 weeks in a row, and I love going to Auburn. If you want to come back to Auburn, if you want to come back to my home city here, because I live here, Kyle, in case
Just
you
just
forgot,
rub it in. Just keep it up. You
is
want that? You want
if
to auger for that hole you're digging with me right now? Just rub it
if
in.
you want to come on back for 6 weeks in a row, the Auburn volleyball team plays Georgia on Saturday and on Sunday inside Neville Arena. Let's go ahead and beat Georgia in some sport this weekend, and you get to come back to Auburn. So yeah, support this team. I'm going to do a better job of supporting this team, and who knows? It could be a whole lot of fun year for Auburn volleyball, and could be the start to something pretty special.
And let's talk. We just kind of talked about scheduling in the last segment too. who decided that? Well, of course, they didn't know when the Auburn Georgia game was going to get picked up, so never mind. But it's just unfortunate timing that we'll be in the heat, not necessarily true, but the middle of a Georgia Auburn football matchup when the first volleyball matchup is going on, because there'll be a 2-game matchup that they'll have on Saturday and Sunday. So Auburn volleyball, put it in your schedule. Pay attention to it, because we're going to be discussing it here more on this show, and you guys can hold us to that if we don't hold up our end of the bargain. And as always, just blame Austin if we don't do it, because it's always his fault.
It's the easiest thing to do.
It really is. That's what the co-host is for, my friend. So sorry about that. That is our show for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. For those of you that watch the live recording, you are always the best. We appreciate you doing that here on YouTube. For those of you that are listening on the audio channel, we invite you to do so on YouTube if you want to, but you're also welcome to listen here on the audio podcast, wherever you're listening to them, or on the audio only YouTube channel that we have now for the podcast, the second channel that we have. However you got this show, thank you for being here and being part of our little family within the Auburn family. You can find me on Twitter at Tiger Eye. Nope, that's not it. Actually, you know what? That's at Tiger Eye 24. At me there for those of you that are mad that I stirred the pot this evening on social media. But if you would like to find me really on Twitter at Kyle Loomis 24, where can they find you, Austin?
Austin G. Scott on just about anything and everything. This is one of my favorite parts of the week. I hope it's our listeners' favorite part of the week whenever they get a chance to tune in. And we'll be back again next week after Auburn volleyball is 17-0.
I love it. We'll be talking to you then. Thank you for tuning in and letting us share the Auburn experience with you. War Eagle.
War Eagle.